Sustainable Development Goals related to UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This is probably the proper time to put on record that the Senate has had this Committee on Sustainable Development Goals for 2 Congresses. We are one of the few in the world that has a Committee on Sustainable Development and Futures Thinking. And so we really hope to be able to come up with hearings to raise awareness on the issues and then also to discuss with experts and stakeholders to find solutions to help us achieve these goals. So specifically, the committee is put into place precisely to track where we are with the SDGs, to prepare for various futures, and to shift our mindset to futures thinking as major policy reform. According to the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, with the current pace in achieving the SDGs, it will take 42 years to achieve the goals. I'm certain that this can be broken down. This is an average, no? But and every country is managing their SDGs at their own pace, managing or mismanaging. But that is the finding of UNESCO. In the Asia-Pacific region, SDG 7 on affordable and clean energy and SDG 9 on industry, innovation, and infrastructure have the most progress. Progress on SDG 13 on climate action has declined despite the region's vulnerability to climate change. In the report, the Philippines was identified as a regional leader in its effort in achieving SDG 12 on responsible consumption and production. I'd like to make a side comment on this because I'm always trying to be mindful on when we are called out either for good or bad reasons, no? And there are usually very specific indicators for this. So yun yung mga gusto kong napapag-usapan natin, ano, na like on the one hand, with respect to gender equality, we are very high in terms of passing laws that protect women. But on the other hand, we also know that we have our own struggles due to customs and traditions that, like many countries, I'll use that word, keep the women in the homes because obviously we have our commitment to families. I do too, which then make it difficult to be in the workforce. On that note, let me pause with my opening remarks to acknowledge the presence of our not stay at home, but very hands-on father, our majority floor leader, Joel Villanueva. Would you like to say something?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me take this opportunity to thank you and commend your efforts and this committee's efforts in ensuring that there is this part of the Senate taking care and ensuring that we are on the right track insofar as sustainable development goals is concerned. It's heartwarming, Madam Chair, that you are at the hem of this particular issues. Lumaki po ako sa pamilya na parehong guro yung nanay at tatay ko. At sabi lang nanay ko lagi, always remember, there's always room for improvement. And the only way to see your improvement is to find out where you are and where you are going. And so I appreciate this committee hearing, despite the fact, Madam Chair, that I'm on another hearing because that's also part of my resolution, our discussions, our resolution, our discussions on public security and order with regard to disarmament of private armies and so on. No? But again, Madam Chair, let me just point out before I finish my very short statement, yung United Nations member states, including the Philippines, adopted itong SDGs in 2015 as a universal goal to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030, everyone would live in peace and prosperity. The Sustainable Development Goals consist of 17 broad objectives. Alam natin yan. Yung 169 merong specific targets. And we wanted to find out where we are and ano pa yung magagawa natin. Malapit na yung budget season, ano yung pwede nating maitulong para makuha natin itong mga tina-target natin. Yung global rankings lang, Madam Chair, from the latest Sustainable Development Report, it showed na yung Philippines ranked 95th out of 163 countries with an overall score of 66.64 out of 100. And I think yung score of 100 indicates that all SDGs have been achieved. So malaki pa yung room for improvement. Hindi naman tayo nagsasabi na bukas may milagro na mangyayari at we'll be able to achieve all these goals. But we are here to help. We are here to find out on how we can possibly reach our targets. And so with that, I would like to put on record, Madam Chair, that I'm literally sitting on your right side. Nasa right hand mo ko, Madam Chair, in pushing for more reforms and achieving our sustainable development goals. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dear colleague, Majority Floor Leader, I know you have to go, so feel free to leave when you have to. But let me make a quick response. I like my hearings to be interactive for those who have joined me before. And I'll continue my opening statement, in a way, a reaction to the Majority Floor Leader's statement. Nung sinabi nga niya na I'm on your right side, literally, ang job kasi ng Majority Floor Leader is to really move along the bills that are pending, but also to find the right balance. So I take his statement very seriously because as one of the senior senators, I usually approach him and of course the Senate President to tell them when there are bills that either I feel or we all acknowledge are priorities versus others that may not really be a priority but are taking up a lot of our time. So I feel that just like the SDGs, ganun yun, di ba? We may have problems that take up so much of our time, but in the bigger scheme of things, we need to be mindful na, is it worth our time, di ba, to be focusing on that issue? And that's where I'll go. And Senator Joel, who was raised by a very empowered woman, and he always refers to it and has a very empowered wife and daughter. I'll go back to the importance here of gender equality, women empowerment, and we actually have four of the 5 in-house resource persons, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, take note, are women. Not that I want it to be dominated. We're looking for the voices, no, the voices, all the voices to be heard. But in my most recent Interparliamentary Union conference, where I represented the Senate, the topic was specifically how empowering women will help us achieve our SDGs. So I bring it to that. Na, it is my job, and I appreciate the support that I get from the Senate leadership, to ensure that in passing the bills and the laws, we are mindful of how it affects all the other bills that are pending, no? So for example, something very close to our heart, Senator Joel Villanueva and my heart, is the Doktor para sa Bayan. And we are mindful that it's not just the doctors that we want to support, no? But that was in a way, our banner bill, because without the medical schools, hindi rin tayo makamove forward. But mindful kami in all our deliberations na bago makatungtong sa medical school yon, may undergrad din yon. So kung wala din yung supporting allied professions like nursing, medtech, therapists, occupational therapists. We have lengthy conversations kasi in one of my hearings, which I believe you attended online, in one of my hearings, which is continuation, is on Wednesday, no, on human health resource, yung sinabi sa amin ng resource person is wala daw, may mga colleges na parang wala daw applicant yung kanilang occupational therapist dahil walang trabaho. Nagtingin kami ni Senator Joel na, well, then we're doing a horrible job because the demand for occupational therapists is very high. For them not to be able to find the jobs, there are major gaps in public and private coordination because, wow, imposibleng walang nangangailangan. Dahil we know both from personal experience na there is a high demand for. And then after that hearing, I had a conversation with Mayor Lani, and ang tagal din ng City of Taguig makahanap ng occupational therapist. Tapos sasabihin sa hearing namin na wala daw demand. But you have to dig further, no? And again, I will end my introductory message by saying na I want to dig further beyond those numbers, di ba? Like when UNESCO includes in its report that none of the countries in the region are on track to achieve SDGs on time. Okay, that is alarming. But that is not my intention to be an alarmist. My intention is, first of all, Philippines, dun muna tayo sa sariling atin na let us celebrate the goals na we've made major achievements. Why won't we celebrate that? We should celebrate it, right? So both Senator Joel and I are in the EDCOM, and maraming problema, but we're identifying each one, and we want to be able to celebrate where we have moved forward, or at least we clearly can agree na these are the solutions. And then we tackle the more difficult ones at the same time. So yun yung goal nitong committee. Be prepared na if you come up with statements, we will dig further. Maybe not in this hearing itself, but in future hearings. And I'd like you to know, Senator Joel, that among our resource persons are universities, not just DAP, no, which is represented by Dr. Lisan Kalina, but also some universities that we have given funding to sa SDGs and futures thinking, so that they can also share with us. Kasi sila naman yung mas expert kaysa sa atin, eh, 'di ba? Nakikinig lang po kami sa mga findings ninyo, sa mga research ninyo, so that we can bring it to the public's attention and identify the proper agencies that can make this happen. So, one of the jobs also we face in the Senate is yun nga, like I said, to help prioritize. Maraming alam ni Senator Joel to, madalas ko siyang bulungan. Bulong muna kasi baka may ma-offend dun sa mga sinasabi ko. But sometimes a bill is good, but somebody has to have the political will to say, sandali lang, but there is something more urgent, more pressing. And that's a very difficult task to make, a difficult call to make. Because merong masasaktan na bakit hindi binigyan ng kasing halagang importansya. But I think the best example there is the approach to disaster risk, di ba? Pag hindi natin pinondohan yan, which we started years ago, we will just be stopgap measures lang tayo, which looks good sa public, parang, ay, may ginawa, pero yung mahaba ang solution, hindi naman ginagawa, which we have started to do naman talaga in disaster risk management. But ganun dapat yung approach natin sa lahat na ito. Okay, so on that note, let us proceed.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
may just add to what you are saying. First of all, let me state on the record that without your help, Madam Chair, we would have not passed the very comprehensive, very helpful Doktor para sa Bayan Law Act. And if you recall, during that time when we were deliberating on the measure, this representation not only authored the measure but also sponsored on the floor, and we were debating on this particular subject matter. It's a very good example that you're pointing out that during the time we wanted to make sure that there would be medical scholarship program, etc. But then, for example, in Central Luzon, there's not even one school of medicine, a public school of medicine in Central Luzon, not one until now, and we've been working for that. And the ratio coming from the World Health Organization that for every doctor can only attend to about 10,000 individuals. Unfortunately, we only have about 3 point something doctors, no? So malayo pa ho talaga. So in order for us to do that, in-incorporate natin dun sa batas na kailangan in the next 5 years, we'll be able to make sure that every single region in the country would be able to offer School of Medicine in public schools. So right now, we open about 3 or 4 now, and then another 2 or 3 every year. You are funding it, Madam Chair, thanks to you. And yun yung tinitingnan natin. And one last thing, Madam Chair, if you look at the SDG number 1, no poverty. SDG number 4, quality education. And you made mention about our job in the Education Commission 2. Number 8, SDGs, decent work and economic growth. Let's just like to put on record that this representation filed this Senate Bill number 2035. We sponsored this on the floor. This is the Trabaho para sa Bayan Act. This particular measure that we are pushing fulfills all these SDGs. Number 1, no poverty. Number 4, quality education Resolution number 8, decent work and economic growth. So just to put on record para din sa ating mga resource persons, nandito kami para tumulong talaga, and talagang meron na kaming mga nasimulan na ginagawa at patuloy pang gagawin, at syempre hindi kami ganun kakumpiyansa kung wala rin yung tulong ninyo, kaya po maraming salamat for being here. Thank you again, Madam Chair.
Need to add also, let's be mindful, Majority Floor Leader, na we have resource persons here physically present, we have online resource persons, and then we have the whole Philippines who can access this online sa YouTube, no? So although obviously yung mga nandito, I think we are already preaching to the choir, but we really want this for public record na lahat ng estudyante, lahat ng LGU, they can access this and learn from it. So I will repeat something that I had already mentioned, yun nga dun sa previous hearing on human health resource, and also in the EDCOM on the advocacy of Senator Joel. I'm not mentioning it because he's here beside me, because kahit wala siya, binabanggit ko yun. Yung kanyang passion for vocational school, in many discussions I've had, and I'll admit that ang focus ko is health, no, because I chaired the Committee on Health for 9 years. But even in the area of health, the shift to postgraduate courses, not naman the shift, but the inclusion of tech voc programs to address our healthcare problems is very, very crucial. The number of doctors, the number of nurses that we have, if you recall, Senator Joel, there was a time given to us by the experts na parang, and I'm guessing on this number, if I have staff who can remember, parang in how many decades pa tayo magiging complete at the rate we're going? Yung ganun ba? Tapos yung sa nurse, because of the high demand of nurses abroad, parang never in our lifetime will we have enough nurses. Unless, and this is what I need to emphasize, yung pag-achieve natin ng SDGs, which is no poverty, good health, and decent work, would include the political will to review the curriculum and come up with programs that will help the doctors manage more human health resources, more nurses maybe with different kinds of training, more specific training. Like, for example, Senator Joel, I worked for a while, studied and worked in New York right after college. And ang emergency medical technician doon, yung sa ambulance, it's a 6-month course. And yet they can save lives. So there are different ways that we can address our human health resource than, as we acknowledge naman, just the doctors. But of course, we need them, no? So on that note, yun yung lalim na trabaho na ginagawa po natin. And I wanted to end on the full circle of work that we're doing. As you acknowledge na sa Central Luzon, kulang pa sa ganito, sa ganito. But in Bulacan State University, just recently, I'd like to say we, kasi kasama naman tayo dyan, we launched the allied health profession, di ba, may college na sila ngayon. So like I said, paano naman magiging doktor? Di mag-uumpisa ka muna dun sa mga pre-med courses din naman, di ba? So it's a long process, which again, tayo mga nandito, naintindihan natin yun, but we want the public to understand that this will really be a generational change that we're looking for. So, sige, okay na siguro yan on all our intros. Let us proceed. Sa haba ng aming intro ni Senator Joel, sigurado ba kayo na mag-i-intro din tayo ng mahabang video? Yun pa rin? O, yun pa rin daw. Sige. Kasi we do have a video from UNESCO na medyo mahaba, but my staff assures me that it is on point and very interesting. So, relax muna kayo. Please offer them water and tea dahil manunood muna tayo ng video from UNESCO, and then after that, PSA that is online, and then NEDA, DAP, and then our universities. Thank you very much.
Honorable Senator Pia Cayetano, the chairperson of the Senate Committee on SDGs, Innovation and Futures Thinking. Honorable Senators, a very good morning, and special thanks for your invitation to ESCAP to present findings of our SDG progress report at this public hearing. It is a pleasure to have this opportunity to address you all. Next, please. So the key messages that emerge from our publication is that at the midpoint, the region has made less than 15% of the necessary progress. Asia Pacific has recorded the strongest progress in affordable and clean energy, Goal 7, as well as industry, innovation, and infrastructure. But significant efforts are required, especially on climate action, Goal 13. Next, please. So under this graph, you see the progress in implementation. That vertical line in 2022 shows where Asia and the Pacific should be if it were on track in terms of implementation. So we see that Asia Pacific is off track for all of the goals. And in particular for climate action under Goal 13, it is regressing. Next, please. When we look at Southeast Asia, we see a similar picture, off track for all the goals, but the goals where Southeast Asia is regressing, in addition to climate action, it is also regressing for Goal 14, life below water, oceans, as well as responsible consumption and production. Next, please. So the part of the good news is that the average progress towards achieving all SDGs has increased slowly from 4.4% in 2017 to 14.4% in 2022. But if the current rate of progress is extrapolated, then the estimated time remaining for the SDGs to be achieved would be 42 years. Next, please. Asia Pacific will miss 90% of the 118 measurable targets by 2030. In green, you see the indicators where if the region maintains its current progress, it will achieve its targets. But this is around only 10% of the measurable targets. Next, please. The COVID-19 emerges as one of the key driving forces, of the slow implementation of the SDGs, and in particular for countries that have updated their poverty statistics and data. We see that COVID had an increase in poverty rates. We see this in Georgia and Kyrgyzstan, and then we also see significant impact on food prices, and the countries with the highest food price anomalies in 2020 were Australia, Pakistan, and Bhutan. Next, please. In terms of renewable energy and waste, despite the assumptions that COVID-19 lockdowns had a positive impact on the environment, the data that has emerged has cast this into doubt. And we see that although the amount of renewable electricity per capita steadily increased during between 2019 and 2021, the rate of growth decreased from 14% in 2020 to 10% in 2021. And of particular concern as well is that beach litter originating from national land-based sources that washed ashore from the ocean increased from 3.36 million tons to 3.92 million tons in the same time period. Next, please. Around half of the Asia-Pacific countries are outperforming average regional pace of progress on some of the goals. So I think this is some good news. We have taken the top 5 performers under each goal, and we see the Philippines as the top performer in Goal 12 on responsible consumption and production. And it is the only top performer under that goal. Next, please. The other more positive side of the story is that between 2017 and 2022, the number of indicators with sufficient data has doubled. And we see this occurring across the Asia-Pacific region. Next, please. And in particular, in the Philippines ranks as one of the top 10 countries for the availability of SDG data. Next. The Philippines also performs better than the average for Southeast Asian countries. Next, please. And consequently, the SDG data availability in the Philippines since 2019 has steadily increased. Next, please. Now, having presented these results on the SDG implementation, which indicates, that the region is off track for all the SDG goals, and that by the current implementation rate, it will take another 42 years for the SDGs to be implemented. I thought I should also present a few of the findings from our second flagship publication, which is the Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific. It was launched 2 weeks ago, and this year it focused on rethinking public debt as a means of accelerating implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So this publication has considered one of the possible avenues for increasing SDG implementation. Next, please. So the economic context, especially over the next 2 to 3 years within which SDG implementation will take place, unfortunately is one of weak economic growth prospects amid high inflation, global economic slowdown, and heightened uncertainty. And in this graph, what we show is that our red dotted line, which is our forecast for March 2023, in terms of real GDP growth and in terms of headline inflation, as compared to our forecast a year ago in March 2022, it has a deeper decline in regional GDP growth, and it has a higher increase in headline inflation. So a worse economic outlook, both in terms of growth and inflation. So a more stagflationary economic environment within which SDG implementation will take place. Next, please. But having said this, then what ESCAP is proposing is new thinking on how public debt can foster sustainable development. So the current conventional thinking is that high public debt is bad for economic growth and stability, that there is a common optimal public debt level that can be applied across countries, and that current approaches on debt sustainability analysis should focus on maintaining debt sustainability in the short term, and it includes fiscal consolidation and limited government access to financial resources for SDGs. What our analysis proposes is that public debt is a powerful tool for development, and if it's used judiciously with a long-term sustainable development horizon, and that appropriate public debt levels are really quite country specific, and that there is no common optimal public debt level, and it really depends on the progress and the ambitions on sustainable development. And so we call for a need to revamp conventional debt assessment tools that have a short-term horizon. We call for a longer-term sustainable development horizon. Next, please. It is true that government debt to GDP ratio in Asia Pacific has increased to an 18-year high in 2021. Next, please. But the situation in countries varies greatly. And once again, I think the good news in the Philippines is that the Philippines is not one of the countries that at present has a high risk of debt distress. So this would suggest there is fiscal space and that there is maneuvering room for investments in SDG implementation. Next, please. So this is very briefly our summary, both of the Asia Pacific Sustainable Development Progress Report. There you have the link to the data and the statistics on SDG implementation. You can explore the interactive summary and highlights. Next slide, please. And then you're also warmly welcome to download our Asia Pacific Economic and Social Survey. That is more the macroeconomic analysis. We also have developed a public debt dashboard, which is available at the link given. And I hope that to the very brief summary of the main findings of these two publications have provided you with data, statistics, insights, and that it will contribute to a productive discussion at the public hearing, and that working in partnership, we can work towards accelerating implementation of the SDGs. Thank you very much.
We appreciate that comprehensive presentation by UNESCO.
Unmute na ako.
And now we will have our presentation from Philippine Statistics Authority, Ms. Wilma Gulien, the Assistant National Statistician, and then be ready, Neda.
Good afternoon, Senator Pia Cayetano, and everyone who is in this meeting. So this presentation is on the Philippines SDG Pace of Progress, and this is based actually on January 27, 2023 Sustainable Development Goal Watch. We call it, the report is SDG Watch, posted in the PSA website. Okay, as an outline of the presentation, I will give a very short background, and then the SDG Pace of Progress results, and then the challenges on monitoring the SDG indicators in the Philippines, as well as some ways forward. So I just like to mention here that we actually made an assessment of the global SDG indicators, which was in the UN SC website by 10 March 2017. And there are 17 goals, 169 targets, and 244 indicators. So we did an assessment, a multi-stakeholder assessment in the Philippines, as well as bilateral meetings. And by May of 2017, we had the PSA board resolution, series of 2017, approving and adopting the initial list of sustainable development goals for monitoring in the Philippines. So we are also able to monitor 17 goals, just like at the global level, but only 97 out of the 169 targets at the global level and 155 indicators broken down as 102 out of the 244 global indicators, but we have considered some proxy, 28 of this, and 25 supplemental indicators, which are alike the global indicators. So just for some information, I'm waiting for the slides. So in reporting the SDG pace of progress in the country, we are actually following the UN SCAP pace of progress. But then there are differences in terms of the set indicators. These are not exactly the same because for the UN SCAP, they have some model-based estimates, whereas in our case here in the Philippines, we gather data from the statistics that we generate in the PSA and in the other national government agencies and local government units in the country. So before we are able to compute for the pace of progress in the country, we actually do a data collection of the baseline information, the latest data, and the targeted data through the SDG Watch. When we say the baseline data, these are the data in 2016. However, there are some indicators where the nearest date or the nearest year to 2016 was considered as the baseline data because that's the year when the data is available for some of the indicators. So the latest data would refer to the updates on the data, and these updates should be an annual estimate as much as possible. And the latest that we have included in this report is 27 March 2023. And the last one is the target data, and these are actually set by the NEDA in collaboration with the PIDS and or the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, and in consultation with the various government agencies and stakeholders, and this was still based on the 2019. So we have the following results now of the progress that we have computed based on the 27 of January 2023 report posted in the PSA website. The first measure for tracking the progress is the current status index, and this current status index has a value from -10 to 10. Yeah, from -10 to 10, which assess the current state of progress made since 2000 in relation to the progress needed to achieve the target. So the length of each bar actually shows the progress of the country since 2000. And the data requirement for this measure to be used is there should at least be 2 or more data points since 2000 plus the 2020 numerical targets. And we can see, we can determine here whether we are achieving the 2022 line, which is actually the ideal. And then we can have also the bar in red colored bar graph, which means that this indicates a regression when it comes to this indicator. So if we're going to see the results here, there are only those that are shaded in blue circles here. These are targets, goals 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 11, 13, and 14, which are actually 8 out of the 17 goals that have sufficient indicators, or 50% of the indicators had satisfied the required data of at least 2 data points plus the 2030 target. So we just have included here goal 15, which we are able to generate this year because we already have one indicator that satisfied the data requirement for this. So we can see here that there are bar graphs in blue.
I'm sorry, na-mute po kayo. Ayan.
Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you, ma'am. Please
Okay,
proceed.
thank you po.
Paki-repeat lang po yung last line ninyo, ma'am, please.
Yes po. So this is now the result of the current status index. We can see here that there are 8 goals wherein progress has been made since 2000. But as you can see here, we are way below the 2022 data of for all the goals except for goal 17. But for goal 17, the limitation here is that we only have one indicator out of the 13 indicators that's supposed to be monitored. Only one indicator met the requirement of at least 2 data points plus the 2030 target. And there are also 8 goals wherein we see a regression from 2000 for those with solid red shade. But you can see here the light shaded red bar graph, which means that there are insufficient data. So for example, for goal 5, this is on gender equality. For goal 5, we only have 4 data points out of 15 indicators. And another one is on goal 7. We only have one indicator out of the 7 indicators. We have only one indicator with data out of the 7 indicators. And for goal 9, for example, which shows here a -10 current status index, there's only one indicator with sufficient data out of 5 indicators. So the other measure for tracking progress is the anticipated progress index, and this would measure how much extra effort is needed in order to meet the target by 2030, assuming that the pace of progress is sustained. And unlike with the current status index, we need at least three data here, three data points plus the 2030 numerical target. And we have three measures. One is whether we are on track. The other one is we need acceleration, or the other one is we are regressing on these indicators. So the anticipated progress index, we answer the question, how likely will the targets be achieved by 2030? And there are 65 out of 155 indicators, the PSA board approved indicators of 155 that have measurable pace of progress, meaning they met the minimum of 3 data points plus the 2030 target. And these 65 indicators can be aggregated into 42 targets out of the uh, um, 97 targets that we are monitoring here in the country. So the details of this is that based on this progress report that we have done using the January data, there are in 11 indicators, or 16.9% of the 65 indicators wherein we are on track. That is, this will meet the target with current rate or minor effort. There are 31 out of 65 indicators, or 47.7%, wherein we need to accelerate the current state of progress to achieve the target in 2030. And there are 23 indicators out of 65, or 35.4%, wherein we saw regression or no progress is expected on these 23 indicators. So the results would show us we are going to show here that the three indicators wherein we are on track among the SDG targets. Actually, this is now at the target level, and the first one is target 1.2, that is by 2030 reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children of all ages living in poverty in all its dimensions according to national definitions. So in 2015, we have the published poverty data of 23.5%, and then it was down to 16.7% in 2018, and it went up again in 2021 because we are still in the pandemic period in 2021. It went up to 18.1%. And the target for this, according to the national SDG, is half of the 23.5% that we had in 2015. So we are looking forward to a 10.8% poverty by 2030. And so hopefully by this measure, it is saying that we are on track on these SDG targets. Okay. The second one is on target 3.A, which is strengthen the implementation of the World Health Organization Framework Convention on Tobacco Control in all countries as appropriate. So we can see here a declining trend from 2009 of 29.7 prevalence of current tobacco use among persons aged 15 years old and over, and it's down to 19.5% in 2021. So for this for this target, again, our progress measure is telling us that we are on track on this SDG target 3.A, because by 2030 we should be achieving 15.3% prevalence of current tobacco use among persons aged 15 years and over. So the third one, This is on target 6.3, which is by 2030, improve water quality by reducing pollution, eliminating dumping, and minimizing release of hazardous chemicals and materials, having the proportion of untreated wastewater, and substantially increasing recycling and safe reuse globally. So we can see here an erratic trend actually for we have broken down this into sub-indicator one, which is the yellow line. And this is on dissolved oxygen. So the target here for 2030 is 100. And we can see that we are actually approaching this from 31 in 2016. It moved up to 42% in 2017. And then we were able to reach 84% in 2018, but unfortunately in 2019 and 2021, we decreased to 80% and 75%. But still, based on the pace of progress, we can still be able to achieve the 100% by 2030. And we have also here sub-indicator 2, which is biochemical oxygen demand. And also we can see here that from 2016 to 2018, it went down in 2017, but again, tumaas po ito in 2018 to 81%, but it was also down in 2019 and 2021. But still, we are on track on this SDG target, and we hope to attain the 100% target for 2030. Okay. Now moving on to the indicators where we see a regression from the time that we monitored this, and this actually shows that from the year 2001 up to the 2021, where we did the latest data monitoring. And also we can see here the 2030 target. So the indicator actually is target 8.1. I should say the target for this is to sustain per capita economic growth in accordance with national circumstances, and in particular at least 7% gross domestic product growth per annual in the least developed countries. So this is actually the annual growth rate of real GDP per capita in the Philippines. And the main indicator, which is in the yellow line, we can see an erratic trend here. From 2021 to 2004, it has been increasing. It decreased for 2005 and 2006. And again, it went up in 2007, and then down again until 2009. And in 2010, we saw an improvement for 2010. It went down in 2011. And from 2013, it has performed erratically until from 2012 until 2019. But because of the pandemic in 2020, you can see here a very big drop. As indicated by the yellow line, the annual growth rate of real GDP per capita for the Philippines was negative 10.8%, but we were able to recover in 2021 at 4.3%. Now the blue line here also shows an erratic trend, and this would represent the regional GDP per capita of Mimaropa, wherein we can see here that also for the year 2020, we have a big drop in the growth rate of the real GDP for Mimaropa. It was actually a little higher than, the negative 10.8 for the Philippines at negative 8.7. But similar to the country level, we were able to recover in 2021. But you can see here at the end point of these two lines that our target for the country level is 2.1 for the country versus what we had 4.3 in 2021, and similar target for the region of 2.1, but in 2021 it was 6%. Another indicator another target, I should say, is target 8.5, which is by 2030, achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including for young people and persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal value. So our main indicator here is represented by the yellow line, which is unemployment rate for both sexes. And we can see here that somehow it is on a downtrend in general from 2005 until 2019. But because of the impacts of the COVID-19 in 2020, the unemployment rate went up to 10.3%. And in 2021, the succeeding year, again, we saw here a decline from 10.3 in 2020 to 8.2 in 2021. And our 2030 target is 5%. So the pace of progress would indicate that we are actually regressing on this target. So we have also shown here the unemployment rate of a female, which is considered to be vulnerable, and it actually followed the same trend as with the national level unemployment rate. So next one, the third one is on target 8.6, which is by 2020, substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education, or training, or NEET. And the graphs would show us that for youth and EET, this is represented by the yellow line. It has remained steady for 2019 and 2020, but it went up in 2021, and our target here for 2030 is 10%. So we are, based on the pace of progress, we are regressing on this indicator. So we have also shown here the vulnerable region, which is region 11, for youth and EET, and we practically saw the same pattern as that at the national level. Okay, for the last one, this is on target 11.5, to significantly reduce the number of deaths and the number of people affected, and substantially decrease the direct economic losses relative to global gross domestic product caused by disasters, including water-related disasters, with a focus on protecting the poor and people in vulnerable situations. So we can see several lines here. The yellow line represents the deaths attributed to disaster. The orange line would show the missing person attributed to disaster, and the blue line as well as the light blue line would represent the missing persons in region 12 attributed to disaster, and also for region 12 the deaths in attributed to disaster. And you can see that the regions follow the same pattern as that of the national level deaths attributed to disaster and missing person attributed to disaster. So moving on to the availability of indicator to be monitored, we are actually monitoring 231 indicators because the 13 of these indicators are actually not applicable to the country level. And out of these 231 indicators, 51.9% are being monitored in the country, and these are the green line and the yellow line, yellow bar graph. So just to cap this presentation, we have the following challenges. If we may just present this, the activities on the monitoring of the Philippine SDG indicators, which include but not limited on the following. One is the review of the list of Philippine SDG indicators. Second is the monitoring at the subnational level on these indicators and the adoption of technology and advancement. Actually, we need some funds for these activities, particularly din po doon sa production of tier 2 and tier 3 indicators, which are still subject to research. So the pace of progress that I have seen that I have presented actually is based on the Sorry. I'm sorry po. Now we have, sorry. We have actually,
Ma'am, ganito muna, break ka muna, magko-comment muna ako. Kasi nangyayari din sa akin yan pagka non-stop yung presentation. Mag-comment muna ako ng isang maikse habang naka-recover kayo sa voice nyo. I noted nga na so basically what you did was you presented the highest performing areas. You had a few, no? Na hinighlight nyo, di ba? And
Yes,
then
ma'am.
mag-nod ka na lang, pahinga mo muna boses mo 1 minute habang nagsasalita ako. And then meron ka nung lowest performing. So ito yung example nung sinasabi ko na the work that is cut out for us is himayin pa natin ng mas malalim yun. Hinimay mo na yan. The fact na meron kang na present sa amin na highest performing and lowest, okay, nahimay. I'll point out one. Sabi mo, highest performing mo yung target 1.2, which is by the year 2030, reduce at least by half the proportion of men, women, and children at all ages living in poverty in all dimensions. Of course, that's good, di ba? I mean, that to me is a major indicator yung poverty level na. So on track tayo dyan. It's in fact the highest performing, sabi mo. Pero, dito naman sa lowest performing natin, ang isa mo dyan is... wait ha, kakabasa ko lang. Give me a second to find it. Ito. Lowest performing natin is, what is this target? 8.6. Tama ba itong by 2020 or baka typo to, 2030? Substantially reduce the proportion of youth not in employment, education, or training. So wow, can you imagine if our youth is not being educated, not being trained, and then kahit assume mo na nga na yung employment niya is not pa nga skilled employment, kaya lang not employed, ano naman klaseng future yun, di ba? Not in poverty nga tayo, pero ito naman yung quality ng life nung haharapin ng youth natin. So you know what I mean? Yun yung gusto kong i-dissect kasi even with our friends in media, di ba, madali nilang ma-pull out yung bad, yung good. But with this group, I'm hoping that we can continue to work together in really dissecting this. Hindi masaya si Senator Joel niyan, ano? Kasi to not even be able to put them in training, parang wow, hindi natin na-achieve yun. Parang medyo sampal din yun, ano? Because Senator Joel has had his
With
ups
the
and
free
downs.
education, quality tertiary and technical vocational education
Yeah.
that we passed.
And sorry to add, no, but I'm very consistent in my advocacies kasi the House has passed a bill on compulsory ROTC, and the Senate will begin hearing. And that has been my battle cry na hindi pa nakakapag-aral ng maayos to. Yung nakapag-enroll na nga, marami pa rin ang dropout rate, tapos mag-i-introduce tayo ng something else. So these are things that I need the public to be aware of to help us make the right decisions, di ba? So yun, okay. Are you ready na, ma'am?
Yeah.
Ano
Thank
ko lang
you.
yan.
Thank you, Senator Pia. So, actually po, we are one with you, but notice po that was on the 2020. So, nag-improve naman na po siya after
So, hindi
2020.
typo yon, talagang 2020 yon.
Yes po, Senator. Opo.
Pero kasi when you include it here, lowest performing areas among the SDG targets, sorry, hindi ko kasi na-take
2021.
note doon sa presentation mo na nag-improve na pala.
If we can go back. 2021,
Hindi, regressing
yeah,
ka
this
kasi.
is
Tama ba?
2021, Senator. This is 2021. But we will be doing the assessment again for this coming September po. We will be releasing and we will be
Okay.
providing your office.
Okay,
But
okay.
then, Senator, since we have the approved PSA board resolution already on the revised set of indicators, so this monitoring was based on the 155 indicators, which is on the second column of this
Correct,
presentation.
correct.
So because of the updating at the global level, where we have now 247 out of the previous 244 indicators. And so
Okay.
we also made a review, and based on the review, we were able to determine to 157 Philippine and SDG indicators. And starting po this year, Senator, this is the one that we are going to monitor starting po
Okay.
this September report.
Sige.
Okay, so
And
just
then,
to
ibigay ko na rin yung, let
Yeah,
Senator Joel.
just
say
one
something.
point. Dun sa unemployment kanina, I was looking at it. Was there indication naman, indicators uh, present with regard to figures on underemployment, which I think
Y-
is a more
Yes,
challenging problem.
yes, sir, Senator Joel. We have also unemployment data, but it's not, underemployment
Under.
data. It's regularly released po sa ngayon. Aside from yung quarterly before the pandemic, we are now releasing it on a monthly level. And we can also provide po the data for this on a regular basis to your office.
Yes,
Should you be
please.
interested po, Senator?
Yes, yes, we are very interested. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Okay
please.
po. Noted, sir. So we just have the following ways forward, Senator Pia, just to cap this presentation. So we will be adopting the refined list of SDG indicators that was approved by the PSA board this year for monitoring starting this year. We will be doing the data collection from June to August, and we will be releasing the report by September 2023. And ma'am, we will be providing your office once we're able to have this pace of progress already. And then we will continue to do annual monitoring of international and national developments on the SDG indicators for possible inclusion in the SDG indicator framework, as well as we're going to establish guidelines on monitoring national SDG indicators. So this will be at the regional and at the provincial level po, ma'am. So that's all po. Thank you very much. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Senator Joel has to go back to the other hearing quietly daw, pero wag na natin palisin quietly. And then only because I want him to hear the last thing I'm about to say. Mabilis lang naman. Of course, I know yung presentation more based on indicators. Of course, I'm happy to know because I've already heard the report myself that yung tobacco consumption ng youth is down, which is good because that is our intervention. We passed a graphic health warning law that put those gory pictures of people with cancer dun sa cigarette. Of course, years before pa ako naging senator, nandun yung Republic Act on the regulation of cigarettes and then so on and so forth. Anyway, but what I wanted to check, and I don't know if you have the answer this, Ma'am Wilma, is if these indicators now include the shift to vaping and other types of the alternative smoking world. Kasi all the newspapers almost every day may nababasa akong articles, mostly out of the country kasi nandun yung research, no, hindi naman madala sa atin, na naglalabasa na yung mga dangers ng e-cigs and vaping. So as tobacco goes down, which is good, the tobacco companies have always planned this na. Sila nga yung magaling mag-futures thinking para sa sarili nilang negosyo eh. Pinlano na nila yung itong alternative form of smoking, which is the e-cigarettes and vapes. And yan ngayon yung pinupush nila sa kabataan. So just the other day, nandiyan na yung news na Jules paid hundreds of millions to families na na-injure ang mga kabataan dahil sa Jules device na yan. So anyway, I'm just saying, no, you may or may not have an answer, pero I would find it a travesty if hindi nasama ng UN sa indicators nila yan. So I hope naman nandyan. Di ako up to date kasi sabi nyo nga may revisions. If not, tayo mismo mag-petition na isama nila yan kasi otherwise, blind tayo, di ba? Blindsided tayo. Kala natin on track tayo sa tobacco pero yung alternative form of nicotine addiction is still there. Okay?
Yeah. Senator, we are happy to inform you that we have conducted the Global Adult Tobacco Survey last year, 2022, and we have covered their vaping, smokeless tobacco. And so, in the next monitoring po of the SDGs, we hope to be able to include po itong mga ito,
Thank you.
ma'am.
And
Thank you po.
ipagdadasal ko na hindi masyado pa ma-addict yung kabataan kasi talagang takot na takot ako dyan. Anyway, thank you very much, Senator Joel. Please leave at your convenience. Thank you very much, ma'am. So
Thank you,
let's move
ma'am.
on. Ayaw niya umalis kasi mas masarap ang kwentuhan natin dito pero wala naman siyang choice Majority floor leader natin yan. Kailangan yan mag-ikot sa ibang hearing. Anyway, let's now hear from NEDA, represented by Attorney Reverie Sapayan. There you are. Go ahead, please proceed with your presentation and discussion. Hello?
Hello. Yes, this one. Finally, it's working. So anyway, after some tech problems, we're working. So good afternoon, Senator Pia. Yeah, 5 minutes. So we're actually glad to be here, privileged to be able to share our inputs on accelerating progress on the SDGs. We're also very thankful that ANS Wilma has already provided us with a very specific context on the pace of progress or the progress of the SDGs in the country. My presentation will start with the overall SDG performance, but particularly with a focus on the targets or the indicators where we are regressing and our ways forward. If we move over to slide 4, please. This slide is another way of looking at the SDG progress. The table on the right has already been shown by ANS Wilma earlier. And this provides us the SDG progress as reported by the PSA. As you can see here, we are progressing in 9 SDGs while we are regressing in 8. And we would like to note that according to the UN Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report 2023, the Philippines is a top country for SDG 12. This is responsible consumption and production among those making better progress than the regional average since 2015. Generally, we need to further accelerate our efforts in the SDGs where we are progressing. These are SDGs 1, 3, 4, 6, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17, while addressing the 8 SDGs where we are regressing. And these are SDGs 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13. If we look at the national progress against the performance of the ASEAN region, we are doing better in goals 12 and 14 relative to the region. We are in the same boat when it comes to goal 13 on climate action, but we are worse off in SDGs 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. This means that we really need to work more purposively and proactively towards achieving our SDG commitments. Kindly note that this is based only on the indicators where we have available data. Hence, overall, there's really that general need to strengthen our statistical capacity as a government, not only for PSA when it comes to collecting and reporting data on the SDGs. So the question we are confronted with is how do we, or what do we need to do to accelerate our progress? Actually, the Philippine Development Plan 2023-2028 already provides or has integrated the SDGs into its overall the formulation of the strategies. Hence, we can say that measures to accelerate SDG progress are already in place. Necessarily, these have to be implemented by the private sector and civil society. So as mentioned earlier, in the interest of time, we will be focusing only on the 8 SDGs where we are G2. So let's move on to the next slide. That's slide 7, please. Yan. So for SDG 2 or zero hunger, the country is lagging behind the most in target 2.1 or food security, most especially in meeting the 100%
Sorry.
recommended.
Sorry.
Yes,
I just need to ask my staff something now. Hold on.
yes.
Go ahead.
So, so we are lagging behind most in target 2.1 or food security, most especially in meeting the 100% recommended energy intake of the Filipinos. There is progress in 2.2 or in ending all forms of malnutrition, but we have to address regression in malnutrition prevalence. So you can see here in the second column, we have identified measures to accelerate this progress. These are the strategies that have been identified in our PDP, and we need support from Congress on the following. You can also see this in the third slide where Congress assistance is very much needed. Some here constitute our legislative agenda. Some are just basic strategies to implement or to accelerate SDG progress. So first, this would include the enactment of the Urban Agriculture Law, which aims to promote vertical farming and urban agriculture as an instrument to contribute to attaining food security. Second is the amendment of PD 1569 or Strengthening Barangay Nutrition Scholars, BNS. The third is establishment of LGU nutrition offices. The fourth requires the passage of the Anti-Healthy Foods in Schools Act, which will help prevent overweight and obesity among children. And fifth is the amendment of RA 8976 or the Food Fortification Law. This measure will also amend RA 8172 to enhance support for the local salt industry. For the next SDG, this is Goal 5 or gender equality. We have two targets that are regressing. First, this is target 5.2 on eliminating all forms of violence against all women and girls, and target 5.3 on women who are married or in union before they reach age 15 and before age 18. To reverse this, there is a need to strengthen the implementation of protecting women and children. And to support this, the following are needed. That's support in the development of a universal and integrated social protection system, as well as amendment of the Family Code, particularly Articles 14, 19, 124, 211, and 255. This will ensure women's equal rights in marriage and family relations. Meanwhile, on Goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation, in order to accelerate progress in achieving Target 6.5, the PDP 2023-2028 aims to strengthen the implementation of integrated water resource management, including water resources assessment, data collection networks.
Sorry,
Yes.
can I I'm tossing to my lawyer some of my questions, pero diretso ko na sa inyo. I didn't
Yes.
want to interrupt you due to time constraints, pero might as well kasi it's very important, no? So yung interventions mo, you may or may not reply if it's, I mean, you may provide na lang the information required later on. But
yeah.
like sa 5.2, support in the development of a universal and integrated social protection system. Ano yun? Ano yun? That's very broad eh. So like, top of my mind, I can break that down, but I don't know if that exists. Is that a draft law, a draft bill that I can review, or are they kalat-kalat na interventions na gusto nating ma-unify? Yun ang question ko.
All right. Yes, Senator Pia. I'll just pull up the description for that particular
sure.
measure.
Kasi we actually have interventions going on with DSWD, myself and my brother Senator Alan, on the need for DSWD to put more manpower and more resources precisely in this kind of interventions. Hindi lang yung pag-deliver ng assistance packages nila, yung talagang interventions.
Sure.
Kaya it caught my attention.
So, in response to that, Senator Pia, on the request for support on the development of a universal and integrated social protection system, the need is here for a legal framework that will rationalize social protection programs toward an integrated system where there is recognition of social protection as a basic right provided by the state. There's the institutionalization of the social protection floor, establishment of effective coordination structures, the establishment and updating of social registries, the enhancement of digital payment platforms, and sustainable financing and partnerships with the private and civil society sectors. So that is what we mean when
So yung
we
social protection, ganito ba kalawak yan? Yung parang yung mga unpaid work for women, ganun kalawak yun? Kasi in as much as I support that, it's not gonna happen soon dahil wala tayong funding. So anyway, we take note of my
Yes.
comment. We can discuss that na lang further. Kasi I'm always looking out for the low-hanging fruits, di ba? Ano yung agad-agad, bukas na bukas, magagawa natin? Ano yung kailangan pang pagplanuhan? Okay?
Okay.
Sige, let's proceed. Go back to where you left off.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so let's move on to slide 9. Tama ba ako? Yes, yes.
And ano na lang, to complete the picture then, dun sa target 5.3 mo naman, you mentioned here ensuring women's equal rights in marriage and family relations, amending certain articles. All of those specific articles were contained in
The
my
family.
resolution,
Oh, yeah.
which is a subject of hearings of 2 consecutive congresses. And then I discussed this in a privileged speech just a month ago on this. So at least you know that there's someone in the Senate who's been pointing this out and hoping na ma-address din natin. So at least, di ba, like align tayo. You notice it, I notice it, and hopefully we can get it done. Kasi if it's law, then maybe you can even fine-tune that later on, if I may request, by way of submitting na ano yung sa side ng legislation, and then ano yung sa side ng executive, di ba? And then kung meron pang specific ano si LGU, right? To make it parang ano na tayo, pinpointing na tayo ng mga who should and who can handle what. Okay, go ahead.
We will take note of all the suggestions, Senator Pia. So I was already at slide 9, and this is on goal 6. This is clean water and sanitation. So we need support from the legislature on the following: funding for the conduct of capacity building for NGAs to conduct continuous scientific studies such as data analysis, modeling, scenario simulations. We also there's also the need to create the Department of Water Resources and Water Regulatory Commission, which will help address the weak and fragmented institutional setup in the sector by streamlining all water-related functions in the government and separate resource regulation from economic regulation. There's also the need to create the Department of Water Regulatory Commission, the Water Regulatory Commission, which will create a business and regulatory environment that is fair, transparent, and conducive for public and private domestic and foreign investment in water supply and sanitation services by implementing fair, just, and reasonable tariffs. So I have 30 seconds left.
Lang. What you sent is quite comprehensive, right? Why don't we leave that to us to study na lang? Kasi it's ano
Yeah.
naman it's very easy to understand.
Mm.
Why don't you make your conclusions? Kasi yun naman yung feedback ko na will apply to all, di ba? Na ano yung, sino ang mag-i-implement nito, etc. And then why don't you use the next 5 minutes to highlight whatever you want to highlight? Ganun na lang.
Alright. So anyway, as you already said, Senator Pia, we've already provided our a very comprehensive presentation wherein we have really identified where Senate support, Congress support is needed. So, but moving forward, there is a need to fortify certain mechanisms for SDG implementation. So if we move on to, I don't know what slide that was, Maui, kasi this is the old one. Can we move 2 ways forward already? Ayun, so
Okay.
So number 1 is on resource mobilization. Currently, we are developing a program convergence budgeting framework and guidelines for the SDGs to better steer resource flows. And this is stemming from the recently the law on the sin tax law, which mandates that 20% of revenues from sin taxes will be used to fund SDG-focused programs. So while regular government programs are actually aligned to the SDGs, the additional funds will ensure that no one is left behind, not even those from future generations. And of course, on monitoring, we really need to improve monitoring our progress. So the existing SDG Watch being compiled by the PSA will also be complemented by our community-based monitoring system, which will provide more granular data at the household level. And with the integration of SDGs in our governance mechanisms at the national, subnational, and local levels through the subcommittee on SDGs, we are also localizing the assessment and planning of the SDG indicators to better identify the gaps in the SDG implementation. Starting July, we will also be building the capacity in the regions to integrate data and policy for the formulation of the subnational SDG catch-up plans. And finally, on stakeholder engagement, institutionalized public participation is only the first step. Actually, the subcommittee on the SDGs stakeholders chamber has already been established. It is composed of private sector and civil society. This was created as an official mechanism for collaboration with various members of society. We have convened the national chamber, and this year we hope to push for its replication at the subnational level or in the regions. And this is how we plan to approach this using a whole of society approach. Thank you.
Important comment. This is my law, yung implementation of tax reforms such that the sin tax law will set aside 20% of revenues for funding SDG programs, di ba? Clearly that is very broad, right? And so we need political will to also determine where this will go. But I'll give you a current example of an issue that was brought to my attention. Actually, nakita ko na yan in the past budget hearings namin, and then it might be a problem again in the coming budget deliberations. Like yung bill, I'll just use the example kasi marami namang ibang ganun din ang sitwasyon. Yung doktor para sa bayan kasi, we are really pushing for funding for the state universities to increase their capacity to accept students, right? So when this bill was initially filed, hindi ganun ka-specific yung provisions na yon. Ako yung naghimay niyan to ensure, tinanong ko yung mga colleges, konti lang naman yan eh, bakit kaya nyo mag-increase ng 20%? Hindi na, puno na eh. Like most couldn't. There was one or two na may ongoing construction sila to increase, but from their facilities to their professors, wala naman silang ability to increase their capacity by a certain percent as originally envisioned by the law, no, by the bill. So we had to craft this very carefully and ensure that there will be budget to support that mandate to increase. So capital, infra, and then PS, di ba? Lahat yon, kino-cover natin yon. Tapos magkakaproblema sa DBM. So I need NEDA to work on that. Diba? Kasi kung clear tayo na this particular bill addresses gaps in the SDGs that are really priorities, health, no? Health. That's why ako nga, I'm the first to say hindi lang dapat doktor yan. But we don't really need a law. It would be nice, but we don't need a law to say na mag-funding tayo ng courses for other health related professions, diba? From nurse, yun nga, binanggit ko na, paulit-ulit na ako para lang akong sirang plaka. So kung hindi yan ipopondo ng DBM, hindi yan mangyayari, 'di ba? So I need NEDA to be on that. That's why your job is so important. You're part of that economic team, right? You need to focus on, so in the last Congress, the Department of Finance supported our vision that a certain part of the collection will go to SDG. So that's broad, di ba? We have now the funding to do this. Let's identify kung ano yung low-hang. Kasi madali ko naman pa-address yung poverty. But how? How? You know, ano yung mga steps mo? What's the easiest? So let's look at all the other related SDGs dahil patong-patong naman yan. Eh yung sa health kasi, it's very tangible, di ba? Create the state universities that will provide these courses, that will incentivize students to take those courses and give them decent jobs in those fields. O di solve yun, o ano yung next, di ba? So like sa poverty, may nakita ko dun yung mga ano nyo, steps nyo dun is to make the facilities available so that the food is available to people. Eh, asan ba yung mga facilities natin, di ba? We're still in the dark ages when it comes to our farming facilities. So yun talaga yung kailangan ma-identify ni NED and then pukpukin nyo yung agencies who will implement it. Okay? So ang next goal natin is kahit meeting TWG tayo to work on this. But I want to, are you good? Because I want to call on the next resource persons to complete our discussion.
We're okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
That was
you.
very good. And rest assured that we will read the details pa and the items that you were not able to present because they are in your presentation. Okay, so next presenter would be from Development Academy of the Philippines, Dean of the Graduate School of Public and Development Management, Dr. Lizan Perante Calina. And then after that, be ready mga state universities. Dr. Lizan, go ahead.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Senator Pia Cayetano, for the invitation to share our thoughts on how are we going to accelerate our efforts in achieving our SDGs. So let me share a very short presentation. Oh no, parang it looks like I'd like to request my colleague Lawrence to please share our presentation. So basically, the key questions really is one, how are we going to accelerate our efforts between now and 2030? And what are the change drivers that may shape the futures of Philippines when it comes to achieving SDGs? So I'd like to present since this is the one being funded by the Philippine Senate, especially your committee, Senator, our 6 platforms wherein we integrated our research and publication. And in the next slide is our research agenda, wherein we crafted the framework incorporating SDGs, of course, the mandate of the Development Academy of the Philippines, the SDG and Futures Thinking, the Philippine Development Plan and Ambition natin, and then our research agenda. So we produce knowledge products like policy notes, the research compendium, and conference and other knowledge co-creation activities. And that will really fall on the cascading of activities. So just very briefly, we have this 3 phases of our research, which of course we're done with 2020, wherein we did mapping, scoping, and situational analysis on the Philippine conditions on the specific SDG, which I will share to you later on. The Phase 2 is geared towards functionality, practice, and innovation development, wherein we can have this as basis for courses and likewise for policy development, especially at the local level. And our Phase 3 will focus on building public management and governance capacities for institutions. So given that, this research compendium in the next slide, please. Maybe the internet is very slow. But then again, the Sustainable Development Goals and Futures Thinking is a research compendium wherein we focus on specific goals using futures thinking as a lens. So the key message that we have right now is that the 2023 Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report is really a challenge for us to focus on 3 things. First, the use of technological innovation and developing more comprehensive monitoring mechanisms, the need to multiply collaborative efforts in measuring SDG progress, and recalibrate our strategies by reinforcing futures thinking in achieving our SDG targets. So very briefly, our paper on leadership and higher education in the Philippines, this is an evaluation actually of the Philippine higher education career system. And the recommendation in this study is for us to sustain PhilHex in order for us to sustain programs. No? And specifically, this will ensure and make our learning materials and learning capacities strong, no, and robust, which will address SDG number 4 on quality education. On the second paper, developing, reclaiming, and democratizing green and open spaces, and this is basically addressing SDG number 11. And in particular, 11.7, which aim to ensure that by 2030, the target of universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces is achieved. So after an inventory of green and open spaces to provide baseline data pertaining to supply, quality, and distribution of green and open spaces, the recommendation is to provide Filipinos some 52 kilometer more of green and open space. So I think the time is up. But then there are more studies that I can provide to you later on, Sen. But if I have to go to the suggestions to ensure the attainment of SDGs, it is recommended.
Can I interrupt?
Yes, ma'am.
Itong mga studies mo, can you give me a very short briefer per study? Because I need to present this sa Senate on the floor so that they know naman na yung budget na binibigay natin may output, di ba? Yun, very short yun. And then I will submit to every member yung mas mahabang summary pa rin, no? And then upon request na lang yung actual. So, yung babasahin ko can be like, I don't know, how many studies ba are you ready to give me?
Yeah, we have 15 already.
Okay, so with 15, I would suggest siguro mga, if there are overlapping topics, then i-categorize mo na yan, and then a one-liner to describe each, and then those who want to request, para magamit din sa mga committee. And then, suggestion ko naman sa staff ko, pag related sa hearing ng ibang committee, isasubmit din natin sa committee na yon para nagagamit talaga. Then we will give the senators, you're listening now, my staff in the back, we'll give the senators who are hearing specific areas, specific topic, those papers also to help them para talagang nakakatulong itong research natin. Okay? Thank you.
Yes, we'll do that, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. So I'll just like to go to the suggestions to ensure the attainment of SDGs, and this is also coming from our Vice President Alan Cajes. And this suggestions include ensuring that our national actions plan, such as the National Climate Action Plan, are reviewed and updated, require concerned government agencies to provide purposive annual targets in terms of both measurable outputs and outcomes that are aligned to the SDG targets, require the concerned agencies to collect and process data as part of a robust monitoring and evaluation system, require the concerned agencies to show evidence of a functional monitoring and evaluation system, and likewise, periodic conduct of program evaluation reviews with clear action plans to address gaps, and to provide appropriate budget support to agencies that are directly involved in the delivery of our SDG commitments. And I'd like to add on that, it's really important for our LGUs to be capacitated because they are the frontliners and they are the implementers of SDGs. So I guess the focus must also be tweaked that will really cover them and will really focus them to accelerate our efforts between now and 2030. And of course, the knowledge co-creation is very important, like roundtable discussions, policy fora, and because there are a lot of individuals who are not really aware of what is SDG. So I think we have to double on education and information campaign as well. Madam Chair, thank you so much.
Thank you for this. We appreciate all the input, no, and the partnership we have with DAP. So let's go now to the state universities. We have, how many universities do we have with us? 4 ba? 3? 3? Okay. So, okay. Sige. We'll start with the ones who are, okay. Sige. We'll start with the ones who are physically present. From Central Luzon State University, Mr. Parsons Hill, Associate Professor. So, for information, Central Luzon State University is the top 2 SUC in the 2022 Times Higher Education. Tama ba? The impact ranking. Tama bang intindi ko? Okay. Top 2 ng SUC natin. And then later on, virtually, andito naman si the president of Mariano Marcos na top 1 naman. So let's start with the top 2 kasi physically present kayo.
Sound check. Once again, good afternoon to Honorable Senator Pia S. Cayetano, the chairperson of the Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation and Futures Thinking. My name is Parcels Hale. I'm an associate professor of Central Luzon State University. And thank you very much for the invitation in highlighting the university's sustainable development goals. In 2022, Central Luzon State University, just to have a brief introduction, CLSU is located at the Science City of Muñoz, Nueva Ecija. This is 150 kilometers from Manila. This is a state university, and in 2022, Senator Pia,
Galing ka dun ngayon?
ES Center.
Gaano katagal yung biyahe mo?
3.5 hours.
Wow.
Senator.
Pinainom ka man lang ba ng kape ng staff mo?
Yes, Senator.
Sure?
Thank you.
Sige.
I have a 5-minute sharing, Senator Pia. Please allow me to continue. As one of the state universities in the Philippines listed in impact rankings among the world's top universities contributing to United Nations, I speak on behalf of the university president, Dr. Edgar A. Orden, and I will only highlight the Sustainable Development Goals where Central Luzon State University, in the context of Central Luzon State University, is contributing. Only in 2022, where CLSU was able to join in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking, and we were able to submit 10 out of 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Just to highlight the top 3, top 4, and top 5 of our Sustainable Development Goals, we are top at SDG 14 Life Below Water, which is 100 to 200 out of 1,434 universities. SDG 7.
Can I understand this better? When you submit that, it is specific to research that you're doing or what you are implementing in your own university? It's clear to me.
That is a very good question, Senator. The Times Higher Education Impact Ranking has four categories, Senator. First is the research, stewardship, outreach, and teaching, Senator. 4.
Number 2 kayo saan? Or
In-
overall yan?
This is an overall, Senator.
So when you submit, you have to submit in all categories?
You have only those SDGs that your university would like to.
In other words, if your university wants to focus on gender equality, pero you have to show yung teaching, yung
Research.
you have to show
The
in
4
all
categories.
4.
That's right,
So kung
Senator.
magaling ka sana sa teaching and research pero wala ka namang sa community mo, then huwag ka na mag-submit.
That's right.
Ganon, ha?
That's right, Senator.
So
We
you're
are.
walk the talk.
Yes, Senator. We are rated in the following categories: research, stewardship, outreach, and teaching.
Okay.
Senator.
Research,
Stewardship,
stewardship,
outreach,
outreach.
and
Ano
teaching.
yung stewardship versus outreach? Outreach, maliwanag sa akin yun, like outside sa community. But yung stewardship,
The definition, Senator, Honorable Senator, is universities are custodians of significant resources, not just physical resources, but also their employees, faculty, student, how they act as a steward of the key factors in delivering the Sustainable
got it.
Development Goals.
fourth, ano yung
And the
fourth?
fourth is outreach and teaching, Senator.
Teaching.
The definition of teaching is that, of course, teaching plays a critical role in the institution, in the university, both ensuring that there are enough skilled practitioners, Senator, to deliver the SDGs in making sure that all alumni take forward the key lessons to sustainability into their future careers as well.
Wow, okay.
And the other
Very
one,
interesting.
Senator, is the outreach. The definition is place is critical in higher education, and that work the universities do their local, regional, national, and international communities is another key that they can have an impact to sustainability. There are 4 key categories that university is being rated, Senator.
And you're associate professor of what?
Communication and Development Studies, Senator. I finished my PhD in Development Communication at the University of the Philippines.
Okay, sige. Very interesting. Go ahead.
Senator, I'd like to highlight the CLSU's top SDGs in contributing SDG. SDG 14 is the top among the 10 SDGs of the university. Life Below Water. SDG 7 is affordable and clean energy. Third is the climate action, SDG 13. SDG 15 is life on land. SDG 1, no poverty. SDG 2, no hunger. SDG 4, quality education. SDG 5, gender equality. And SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. The SDG 17, Senator, is the partnership for the goals, which is required for the universities to be input in. However, we are rated and ranked as 601 to 800 overall, 1,438 universities worldwide. Senator, the highlight of the SDGs of Central Luzon State University is reflected on its thrust in terms of the agricultural sector, the fishery sectors. I'd like to anchor it to the CLSU's mission and vision, where we focus on, as a state university in Central Luzon, the ultimate measure of the effectiveness of Central Luzon State University is as an institution of higher learning is in the contribution and impact on educational, economic, social, cultural, political, and moral well-being and environmental consciousness of its people, the people it serves. This is one the sustainable development goals is something personal to the university in terms of the SDGs that we go further to, Senator. And the intervention, I have a couple of minutes. I'd like to share to you our interventions in terms of research, in terms of stewardship, in teaching, and in public engagement as well. In research, based on the rankings, Senator, there is a challenge on the research publications. As in the context of CLSU, in terms of the publications, it's the Elsevier who farms out the publications of the CLSU per SDGs. So we have a challenge on that in terms of the research publications. Through research, the CLSU beacons. Research beacons as follows in agriculture, fisheries, agricultural biosystems engineering, and climate actions are just examples, Senator, of the pioneering work tackling the world's biggest challenges. Our intervention through teaching, the university is committed to empowering students with, of course, their immersion, their lifelong learning. In terms of public engagement, we focus on widening participation, Senator. Widening participation addresses patterns of underrepresented higher education. We do this by targeting prospective groups from currently underrepresented, including students coming from low income backgrounds and vulnerable ones, estranged from their families, from military, also from who live with disability as well. We consider that. And through campus operations, the CLSU administration is very supportive in terms of addressing policies, regional institutional policies to support the attainment of these specific metrics per SDG. It's really challenging, Honorable Senator, since CLSU is just relatively new dun po sa SDGs. However, my time is up. Thank you. However, we are committed to contributing towards the national development through sustainable development goals. Thank you very much, Senator, for the time.
Thank you. I didn't quite understand what was your problem with the research. Ano yung challenge mo doon?
The challenge, Senator, is to publish our research articles towards.
Challenge? Why is it a challenge? You mean financially? I don't understand. What's the challenge about it?
In terms of, we need to really push through the sa pagre-research and publications, pag-publish po ng scientific journals. Yes.
Your staff in
That's right, Senator.
what do you call this, your masteral students and all that.
That's right.
Yeah. So maybe you can tie up with, like, well, that's a lot of it. So how do you, kasi nga, I feel like it's not ingrained in our, and we really need it eh.
That's
Yeah.
right, Senator.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Well, not comprehensive enough, but very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
So we'll go to the top 3 in the 2022 Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. And this is Tarlac Agricultural University, represented here by Dr. Christine Ferrer, Director for External Linkages and International Affairs.
Thank you po. To our Honorable Senator, Madam P.S. Cayetano, and those joining us in this session, good afternoon po sa inyong lahat. On behalf of Tarlac Agricultural University and with the blessing of my university president, Dr. Max P. Guillermo, I'm humbly honored to share TAU's experiences and insights in measuring the impact of our programs through the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. As a short introduction about our institution, TAU is located in Camiling, Tarlac, offering 28 academic programs with a 7,281 student population, including the laboratory school, being served by 550 academic and non-academic staff. It is the former Tarlac College of Agriculture and was just converted into a university in 2016 by virtue of RA 10800 and of course with your support, Ma'am Pia, during that time. A validation of TAU's commitment for the SDGs, the university got hold of another global recognition for placing 601 to 800 in the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking in 2021 and in 2022. In 2020, the Commission on Higher Education International Affairs Services Office called for a masterclass for SDGs for HEIs. So after knowing the metrics, we at Tarlac Agricultural University decided to measure our report on the SDGs, so we submitted our data to the THE. Surprisingly, when the results came out, TAU is the only state university in the Philippines to be included in the rankings in 2021. Other higher education institutions from the country that secured spots in the impact ranking are private HEIs like Ateneo de La Salle, UST, and Mapua University. With TAU's inclusion in the ranking, I believe this inspired other SUCs to also participate and measure their progress towards the SDGs. Thus, in 2022, there are already 15 HEIs included in the THE impact ranking, and 7 of them are state universities and colleges. So for TAU, our top SDGs in 2022 are SDG 2, Zero Hunger, SDG 4, Quality Education, and SDG 5, Gender Equality. And surprisingly, in the whole Philippines, we are number 1 in terms of quality education, or SDG number 4. We are compelled by our commitment to initiate social transformation as we engage in innumerable programs anticipated to affect change and stay relevant. With our participation in SDGs, Madam Senator, I would like to underscore the importance of first-generation students, especially for SDG number 4, which placed us for number 1 in the whole Philippines, because we really give due emphasis for our first-generation students. When we say first-generation students, these are the first from their family to study. So we take note of this data. And at Tarlac Agricultural University, 35% of our students are from first-generation families.
When you say you take note of the data, do you provide special assistance to them? Like may counselor ba sila, may mentor, paano ba?
We started taking note of the data when we participated in the rankings. That's why when may ganun palang indicator, sinasama na po namin yun sa sa data namin for admission, for student services.
Wonderful. And to go back, no, pati sabi niyo 15, no? You mentioned 15.
Yes po.
Let's talk. I'd like to meet with all of them. Let's have a sharing like that. That is relevant to me. No, I'm sure if you had more time, may stories ka din na ganyan na ma-share, no. So maybe na succeeding hearing, kahit virtual, para hindi na kayo mahirapan, lalayo yung pinanggalingan nyo. We can share that kasi it's it's best practices na you only became aware of in a way because na-highlight yun dun sa kailangan mong take note of and to act upon it, di ba?
Opo.
So I suppose kayo rin. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
So what we did po, ma'am, is we studied the metrics very carefully and integrated it in our operations in the university. So we have identified key champions from the university na bawat office po namin at bawat college, meron po silang mga SDGs na pinagfo-focus on. Say for example, yung SDG 1 or SDG number 2, that's being taken care of by our extension department. For SDG number 4, that's being focused by our colleges, our admissions office. So what I'm saying, ma'am, is that for all the 17 SDGs, meron pong specific offices and colleges na in charge po sa mga yun para may tumitingin po sa mga
Big
data.
naman.
So, meron
Very
po kami
impressive.
SDG committee
May
for
ganun ba tayo
in the
dito?
university.
Sabihin nga natin kay
So
SP.
say, for example, for SDG number 17, which is for the partnerships for the goals, yung office ko naman po ang nag-aasikaso nun. So, we have also integrated SDGs in our research and extension program. So lahat po ng nagsasabi na extension or research project, tinitignan po namin yung SDG integration. So that becomes one of the criteria in the approval of our research and extension projects. In terms of instruction naman po, ma'am, we have integrated one subject, which is global citizenship education, which tackles the SDGs. Kasi importante din po na ang ating mga estudyante aware sa mga SDGs po nito. So in this subject, our students are given the opportunity to do community-based project at sila po yung namimili ng SDGs na gagawin po nila for their respective communities. So aside from being ranked, we give emphasis na international rankings are not only a battle for prestige. It's not knowing which universities are among the best in the world. But what is most important is that when we are able to fulfill our mission of creating a social impact and have helped and served as an influence and inspiration to other institutions. So yun po ang aming experience, Ma'am, on SDGs. Thank you po.
Thank you very much. Okay, so finally, let's go to our number one SUC in the 2022 Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. They rank in the bracket of 401 to 600. Dr. Shirley Agrupis, University President of Mariano Marcos State University. Congratulations, and you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I hope I am coming to you loud and clear, Honorable Chair of the Senate Committee on SDG and Futures Thinking. But before that, Madam Senator, I would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to you for your unending support to our colleagues of medicine. Our best return of investment is giving you sustained 100% passing and #1 this school year. So thank you so much. I am very happy, honored for being given the opportunity to share our initiatives in relation to sustainable development goals. My presentation has two parts: MMSU's impact in achieving the SDGs and MMSU's inputs and recommendation. But I know we are only given limited time, so I will just present in passing the MMSU's impact in achieving the SDGs. Anyway, we will be submitting to you our presentation. In part B, MMSU's inputs and recommendation, balik mo. We are highlighting the role of SEI as key contributors in attaining the SDG, supplementary data from higher education policies, performance indicators, proposed establishment of SDG impact dashboard for SEI, because it is very alarming to see that the report of PSA, we are 43 away from realizing our SDG. But when we take a look on the different key roles and programs of HEI, maybe we will attain that by 2030. So as publicized, MMSU's impact in achieving the SDGs, we submitted only our programs in 2022, and fortunately we ranked 101 to 200 in most of the programs that we applied. We specifically submitted documents for SDG 7, the affordable and clean energy, 5, gender equality, no poverty, partnership for the goals, quality education, peace and strong institution, and the SDG 3. It is just so unfortunate that our lowest impact rating falls in SDG 3. That's why we use this as our compass in recalibrating our activity. And I am so happy to tell you, Madam Chair, that today we signed a memorandum of agreement with the Healthcare Executive Society of the Philippines, because soon we will be offering masters in healthcare management. So moving forward, what are our initiatives under the different SDGs? I will go past here. In SDG 7, we operationalized in full swing the National Bioenergy Research and Innovation Center. Here we capacitate 7 HEI in their bioenergy programs. And we partner with Department of Energy for the Net Zero Energy Building. In fact, we will be launching our first building, which is net zero, and on the pipeline is the PPP, private public partnership formed in modeling MMSU as the net zero university. Next slide, please. And for the SDG 5, we have here the key activities accomplishment. The university tracking of access measures for women, review approval of equal opportunity, review approval of anti-sexual harassment, and many other projects. Next slide. Let's move fast. So no poverty, these are our key activities and accomplishment, increasing number of poor students, that is 20% of bottom income household admitted in the university and receiving financial aid. We keep track on the local community startup trainings, financially and socially sustainable businesses. We do intensive capacity building activities, dispersal trainings on food processing, financial literacy trainings. We do capacitate our MSMEs and distribution of milled rice. And next slide.
May I make a comment? Can you go back to that slide?
Yes,
And
po.
yeah, I mean, obviously the three schools, the three universities represented here are already doing something about this, no? But since kayong tatlo yung nandito, no, I address it to you. Katulad nitong example nyo na increasing the number of poor students, 20% of the bottom income households. And that's what you call the first generation, no? Tama?
Yes,
Yung
yes,
iba, ma'am, ay
yes.
first gen po.
First gen. You call them the first gen. First gen what? Just first gen?
Yung first generation students, ma'am, they are the
First
first to study from the
Yeah.
family.
Okay. The sa inyo naman, it's increasing the number of poor. So most likely, sila din yan eh. Most likely, no? Na sila din yung ano. But beyond that, the same question I had, like, what kind of support though would you give them when they come in? Meron talagang mentoring? Kasi if ganyan na yung background nila, ang layo niyan compared sa sustadyante na may sariling laptop, di ba? Sa bahay niya, may sarili siyang kwarto, tahimik, mag-aral. Yung I want to dig further, and again, we can have a separate hearing on this, but I just like to bring it to the attention, well, to everyone's attention na I'm very keen on that kind of intervention and what we can even do to further the support for them. Kaya nga ako, I'm really for targeted financial support eh. Kasi the need of a student like this would definitely be much, much greater than somebody who comes from maybe a low income pero may income pa rin yung pamilya, nakapag-aral naman lahat ng mga kapatid, di ba? So I'm very happy to be receiving this kind of input from all of you. Sige ma'am, go ahead.
Yes po, I would like to emphasize here, ma'am, na inuumpisahan po namin sa mga admission kasi purna nga sila, hindi sila makakapunta sa admission testing center namin. So kami po yung pumupunta. We have a very strong partnership with LGU to conduct the entrance examination of this aspiring.
Okay, and I would even go further. Since may contact na rin kayo sa mga LGU, kasi kayo nga ang state university, talagang minomonitor nyo na sana talaga yung mga pamilya na yan para lahat ng pamilya magkaroon ng first gen, di ba? Grade school pa lang sila, high school pa lang sila, minomonitor na sana natin. Because at the end of the day, yung chances din nung, alam na natin yung data, di ba? Yung umaabot pa nga lang sa senior high, ano na yun eh. Bawas-bawas na yun eh.
Yes.
Nag-drop out na yan sa junior high, nag-drop out na yan sa basic ed pa lang. So, yung iba doon, hindi pa rin natin nakaka-capture. But of course, it's a start. It's a start, no? So I appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yes po, next sa 17, next slide. Yeah. So ang aming initiatives po sa partnership for the goals, we really force functional partnership with local, national, and international organization, collaborated with local and international partners for the implementation of SDG responsive research and development projects. Lately, we spearhead or kami po yung lead university ng development of probiotics and functional foods indigenous in Ilocos region. So we participated now, we collaborated now with the Phi University, the AIT, and then the China Agricultural University and other universities in Japan and in the United States. Next slide. So for SDG 4, Our key activities accomplishment here is that increasing number of students enrolled through expanded tertiary education equivalency and accreditation program. Nakakatuwa po dito because before the PHE, we just waited for those enrollees na gustong mag-enroll. Pero ang ginawa po namin is that we go from one LGU to another. And we talk with the LGU that they will send at least 2 participants in the IDEA program. And we increased tremendously in the number of enrollees in our IDEA program. Next slide. The next SDG that we subjected for THE evaluation is the SDG 16, the peace, justice, and strong institution. These are our key activities and accomplishment, producing graduates in law. By the way, the recent bar examination, we landed top 5 performance school in our bracket. And then
Congratulations.
we keep improving the Citizens Charter revised to conform with the ease of doing business and efficient government service delivery, sustained implementation of equal opportunity policy, quality management system, and anti-sexual harassment rules. We engaged with stakeholders through consultation meetings, dialogue, and forum. Next slide. And the last but not the least, it's so very unfortunate, as I mentioned a while ago, that we only rank 601 to 800 in the PA's impact ranking on 3, which we claim na sana malakas kami dito, but I think we fall short in reaching our community. That's the reason that we initiated the creation of a degree program on healthcare management program, which is a masteral level. And we are now in partnership with the Healthcare Executive Society of the Philippines with the intention of educating or empowering our health workers in the different LGU. Next slide. But as I've said, as I've mentioned earlier, the focus of my presentation, Madam Chair, is the inputs and recommendation, because we read, we listened the presentation of PSA, and the context where we are coming from is that where these are based on these two passages from the Asian the Pacific SDG Progress Report. It is very alarming to note that it would take extraordinary efforts to achieve them by the target year of 2030. We need to act quickly, think smarter, make intelligent investment, strengthen global partnership, and so on and so forth. Another one is that given the slow rate of improvements in data availability, the Asia-Pacific region will not have sufficient data availability to measure every SDG indicator by 2030. So, taking off from the slide of NEDA, that is moving forward, that there should be an intensification of data gathering. Next slide. There is a need really in recognizing HEI as key contributors in attaining the SDGs for 2 primary reasons. One, HEI, like CLSU and TAO, we have the fourfold function: instruction, resource extension, production, stewardship of resource management, are inherently responsive to the SDGs from 1 to 17. They are widely dispersed worldwide. Hindi ma-imagine more than 20,000 universities. In the Philippines, we are 2,424, 546 SUCs, 140 main and 432 satellites. If all the data from this 2,424 HEI, I don't think we fall short in achieving our SDG. However, Madam Chair, HEI are not visible considering our country's approach in cascading or localizing the implementation of SDG. Its primary focus on LGU2 NEDA DILG GMC 01 2018. HEI are regarded as safe and neutral spaces, respected and trusted stakeholders in society with immense influence in advocating the SDG. Next slide. So furthermore, there is very little attention. We read the publication. there is very little attention given to HEI considering the country's commitment in achieving the SDGs. Based on the SDG, what's posted in the Philippine Statistics Authority website, there are barely 4 sub-indicators expressly involving higher education. As you can see here, the 4.3 S3 passing rate in license. Ito lang po yung nakikita na data na pumapasok coming from HEI. Passing rate in licensure examination, parity indices, faculty qualification with PhD student. This brings me to my next point. Looking into higher education policies and performance indicators can yield supplementary data for SDG 4. Quality education, decent work, and economic growth, industry and innovation infrastructure. The Asia and first under target 4.3, ito po example to, by 2030, ensure equal access for all women and men to affordable. So possible indicators for refinement for consideration is that net enrollment rate in tertiary education or share of population with tertiary education. Only net enrollment rates in elementary and secondary education are currently being measured. This needs to be measured given the implementation of RA 10931 or the universal access to quality tertiary education. Additionally, the number of beneficiaries such as those receiving free tuition or scholarship may also be measured. Next slide. Next po, for indicator 4.7.1, extent to which GCE and ESD are mainstreamed in national education policies, curricula, teacher education, and student assessment. Possible indicator for refinement for consideration is that number or proportion of HEIs offering degree programs, mainstreaming integrating global citizenship education and or education for sustainable development, or number of degree programs mainstreaming integrating GCE or EHC. Next slide. Another possible indicator that should be considered is to look at the presence of national policies mandating the mainstreaming or integration of GCE or ESD in the curricula. An alternative is to measure or extent of implementation in terms of outputs. I discussed earlier that one of the key initiatives of MMSU under SDG 4 is integration of ESD in the curricula of our degree programs, but apparently this is not being taken into account in the monitoring of SDG progress. There could be other of the 2,400 plus HEI, there could be other programs related to what MMSU is doing. Madam Chair, this chart was taken from SCAP SDG Gateway, showing 2020 data for indicator of 4.7, sustainable development mainstreaming in education for Southeast Asia. But note that we already have lost in mandating the mainstreaming of integration of ESD in education as early as 2008, such as RA 9521 and other Republic Acts. So we strongly suggest the formulation of appropriate indicators for sustainable development mainstreaming in education in the country. This is one of the targets which cannot be measured yet due to insufficient evidences, as noted in the SCAP report. There are also possible indicators that can be delivered from the praxis of SUCs, which are being monitored and reported regularly. Under sectoral outcome, relevant and quality tertiary education. I'm showing here target 8.5. By 2030, achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all, and equal pay for work of equal value. Possible indicators for refinement should include percentage of graduates 2 years prior that employed, because all SUCs have a very good alumni tracer program. So SDG Watts include only unemployment rate based on the labor force survey. So wala po kasi, hindi nakikita yung mga data na gine-generate. So if 2,400 HEI are required to submit their alumni tracers, and not only dependent on the labor force survey, maybe the decreasing unemployment rate, which is alarming, 10% as reported, ay mapapataas po natin. Under sectoral outcome, higher education research improved to promote economic productivity. The percentage of graduate school faculty engaged in research work applied. So yung target 9.5, enhanced scientific research, including by 2030, encouraging innovation and substantially increasing the number of research and development workers per 1 million people. Hindi po yan nakaka-cure. And it is through your initiative that you are giving us innovation research and innovation funding. Pero hindi po nakaka-cure sa present data monitoring ng ating focal person ng SDGs. So, possible indicators, we are suggesting possible indicators for refinement to look on the percentage of graduate school faculty engaged in research work applied in any of the following: A, B, C, and D. Finally, my last point. I'm sorry, I went, medyo matagal po ang presentation ko, pero talagang binasa po namin kasi yung report. Finally, on my last point, analyzing the performance of HEI through national dashboard for SDG can identify key areas for resource allocation and capacity building to empower them in achieving the SDG. Since the THE impact ranking showcase higher education institution the work delivered by HEI that contribute to the attainment of all 17 SDGs, a deeper analysis of their performance can identify areas where there are significant gains or where progress has been lagging. This can inform policy decisions and actions, as well as the formulation of implementation strategies, including proper allocation of resources and capacity building. Madam Chair, we are proposing and requesting support through Chair for the establishment of a national dashboard for SDG through a 3-year subscription to the SDG Impact Dashboard. Onboarding the more than 2,004 HEI, I think will give up sufficient data to give data for the attainment of our promised deliverable by 2030. The impact ranking analysis, including data sets, the 3-year subscription will provide THE impact ranking analysis, including data sets, data and performance analysis of all 15 Philippine HEI, likely to increase every year, that have participated in the impact rankings, benchmark analysis across more than 1,500 HEI globally across all 17 SDGs, access to raw data and evaluation of policies and other evidence. Madam Chair, the dashboard can be further explored to produce data information for implementing, monitoring the country's progress towards HEI. Yan lang po, we submitted a 8-page, no? 8-page position paper. The title is Recognizing the Role of HEI in Achieving the SDG, as part of our commitment to you and to our country. MMSU is always ready to give assistance, whatever we can, to address the SDG. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Matindi yung paalala ng staff ko na overtime na kayo, ma'am. Pero number 1 naman kayo. Kaya yung input nyo is very valuable. We really appreciate it. And even to the others na I know you would have wanted to take more time. I always feel bad yung minsan 5 minutes lang nabibigay. Pero for your information, nag-a-abroad ako minsan ang binibigay sa akin na time 2 minutes. And I'm like, seriously? Pinag-abroad ako, 2 minutes ako magsasalita. Wala tayong magagawa eh. Ganun talaga minsan eh. But that has happened to me, 2 minutes. So yung speech ko na mga 15 minutes, kinumpress ko talaga sa 2 minutes. Pwede na ako mag-TED Talk. Anyway, Thank you so much, everyone. Like I said, I want to follow this up with another session just with the state universities. But of course, NEDA, DAP, PSA will continue to be invited naman. Dito pa lang sa hearing na to, I already got such valuable information. Parang nakakagana naman yung trabaho natin na sometimes it's just all numbers, sometimes it's just all theories, but especially the presentations of the SUCs, when I think of the young people who you are educating, you bring to life this work that we are doing. So on that note, I will suspend today's hearing. My staff will ask you for some details kasi ang immediate outcome ng hearing na to is I will deliver a privilege speech to summarize the outcome of our hearings. But then based on the recommendations that all of you have, kindly feel free to submit your notes, a formal, doesn't have to be formal, it can be a discussion with my team. Do you foresee the need for a bill that will help us fast track the attainment in the next 7 years? So sabihin nyo kung ano yon, because in this discussion, we can determine na ano yung funding lang naman pala kailangan. Huwag nyo na akong pahirapan na magsusulat pa ako ng bill, di ba? O di kaya naman better coordination with the LGUs pala yung kailangan. My sister-in-law, si Mayor Lani Cayetano, is very active dun sa League of Cities nila. And of course, kausap naman natin po din lahat ng mga LGU key officials, so we can do that. So I need to know for sure which one will require the power of Congress sa funding. If that's the case, then we work on it now for funding this coming October, di ba? Or which one ang talagang we need to write it into the law. Okay? So on that note, suspended. Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you for those who were present online, especially MMSU for their number one SUC in the Philippines in the 2022 Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. Sige, the hearing is hereby adjourned.